and not lose votes, alluding to his unlimited political power. We're about to witness him, Nora, in a large motorcade be escorted with rolling closures through Manhattan as he is arraigned facing criminal charges. The crowd out here is numbering in the hundreds, but that's mostly New York tourists who are watching this massive spectacle unfold. We've seen a few pro-Trump supporters with their trucks and their MAGA flags circling the building, as well as anti-Trump demonstrators holding up signs with images of Donald Trump in pinstripes with the phrase "lock him up," again alluding back to the contentious 2016 campaign. We do expect this to unfold at any moment, and it will be a remarkable and historic moment for us all to witness in what is still the country's biggest and busiest city, operating as usual.
All right, Errol Barnett there on the scene. We'll come back to you as soon as there is movement. Want to bring in John Dickerson, and as we watch this spectacle that is going to culminate in a legal arrest and arraignment, America's going to watch this, but come away with different views.
They are. And, you know, you've used the geography of the day to make a really important point. We're finally going to get some facts today. And those facts will come from the legal system, which has a structure and a set of rules. Today is the intersection of the circus, what we're watching, Donald Trump's criticism of the judge, the intersection of the circus with the legal system. And the legal system is supposed to take facts that we're all watching together and treat them seriously. In America, everything is pre-chewed by partisans. We've had 6 days of pre-chewing of this indictment, even though we don't know what's in it. So what we're going to get today is facts, and then we're going to watch the system either succeed or fail in handling those facts and their merits, not based on where you are in your political standing. So this hopefully will be less circus and more the American legal system.
And Robert Costa, in that pre-chewing that John Dickerson talks about, we have noted over and over again the historic nature of this, the first time a president faces criminal charges. And yet this is just one of several cases where the former president faces legal jeopardy.
That's right. And Nora, it's hard to chew on a sealed indictment being done by a grand jury, but we're doing our best here at CBS News to find out what's going on. At the end of the day, what we believe is going to happen is the District Attorney Alvin Bragg is going to make a presentation about this indictment once it's unsealed. And it's going to be about falsifying business charges, a hush money payment made by Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer, to Stormy Daniels back in 2016. And Bragg is going to argue that this is a felony crime, a Class C felony in the state of New York. But this is not Trump's only challenge. In fact, when you talk to Trump's inner circle right now, they say they're going to move to dismiss this case immediately, that this is the first inning of a long legal battle. And what they're really paying attention to are those ongoing federal grand jury investigations led by the special counsel, Jack Smith, one on Trump's handling of classified material and another on January 6th. In fact, Nora, there was breaking news today. Some of Trump's top aides from the White House days, like Mark Meadows, his former chief of staff, will likely be compelled to testify a judge's ruling in that grand jury investigation. He wants to hear that testimony.
That is a big development this morning that is not related to what's happening here in Manhattan, but actually happening back in Washington, D.C., in our nation's capital. Want to bring in Ricky Kleeman, former prosecutor. You're going to be able to walk us through every moment about what's going to happen inside that courthouse. We know that the former president will arrive. He will be brought up to the 7th floor inside that courthouse, where he will be arrested, fingerprinted, then brought up to the 15th floor in a private elevator, which is the courtroom, and just walk a few steps into that courtroom. That's where we're told that camera is, and where one source this morning saying that Donald Trump could make a statement before entering the courtroom. We've also got some new information, too, here at CBS News about what Trump's legal team may want to do.
Well, what you find is that they have not seen the indictment, nor has anyone in the United States or the world seen the indictment. So it is said that Trump's legal team may want to have a recess when the indictment is unsealed so that they can go into a spare room and read the indictment before he comes back into court and enters a plea of not guilty to that indictment. I mean, it's one thing to say I'm not guilty of anything. It's another thing to know what you're accused of.
Will that delay today's proceedings?
If it delays anything, it would probably be a matter of minutes.
We're also told this morning that as that indictment is read, The lawyer could say not guilty, or the defendant themselves could say not guilty. And we're told that Donald Trump himself may use those words.
Oh, well, I would expect that Donald Trump would want to use those words. And we can go all the way back to celebrated cases, nothing as historic as this. But you can remember all the way back to O.J. Simpson, who's talked about being absolutely 100% not guilty. This is a moment for Donald Trump to say to the world, I did not do this.
All right, there are some new developments involving that judge this morning that is presiding over this case. First, Donald Trump taking to social media, attacking the judge, calling him highly partisan, also attacking the judge's family, calling those family Trump haters. And Jeff Begay, I understand we have new information about a new threat against this judge.
Well, there have been threats coming in for quite some time now, but it's important to mention, I think, Nora, as well, that there are no specific or credible threats. Saying that, you still have these issues with a lot of chatter online from people threatening the judge or threatening the DA. And in fact, CBS News has learned that there was a threat, a bomb threat, a detonator threat against DA Alvin Bragg. The threats, they think, according to our reporting, is coming from a Russian server. So this is the other issue that intelligence agencies as well as the NYPD are dealing with right now are these bogus threats. You have to check everything out because you can't be, you want to make sure everything is safe and secure.
Thank you for pointing that out. As Trump is making these threats on social media against the judge, we are reporting that there is a new spate of email threats against the district attorney, Alvin Bragg himself, that is being handled by the many law enforcement officials who are here in New York today. The NYPD told all of its officers, all 35,000, to stand and be ready. John, let's talk about what we're going to see here today by the former president.
Well, you've already mentioned what he's saying on social media, and I think it's important to connect this to a storyline we've seen in the Trump years, which is when he gets a result he doesn't like, whether it be the election or an indictment, does he work within the system as the system's been designed for hundreds of years, or does he encourage his supporters and work himself very hard to work around the system? And so you see him, he's basically working the refs with the judge. And day by day, minute by minute, if he is making threats about the judge or other people join him, that's an effort to undermine the system that will either exonerate him or say he's guilty. It's an attack on the system. It's not just one person's set of events. It is an attack on the system. This is larger than just one man. And so those threats are a very important part of a continuing, ongoing story, and they're also softening the ground or creating the conditions for the way this verdict, if there is one, will be received by Trump supporters and by people on the other side.
We should note we now see Donald Trump on the move, his motorcade making its way down Fifth Avenue here in New York to Lower Manhattan to this courthouse. And Robert, already we have a sense of the former president's mood from his advisors.
When you talk to people who are very close to Donald Trump, your initial inclination might be he must feel embattled. He's facing an indictment. He's going to court today. But in fact, it's the exact opposite. People close to Trump say he's been running for president since right after the midterm elections in 2022. And this is the most attention his campaign has gotten since that moment at Mar-a-Lago back a year ago, more than a year ago. And so you're looking at a candidate now for federal office running once again for the presidency who believes he can use the grievances of his supporters to fuel him in this Republican presidential race. And he has seen some of his rivals, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, not go at him at a vulnerable moment, but instead, in a way, rally around Trump, go to his defense on this legal issue. And so for Republicans, it's a complicated moment. When you pull many of them aside privately, they say, we want to move on from Trump. But publicly, they know that core Republican voter looks at this entire episode and says, I'm standing with Trump. They don't want to go against that dynamic.
And that is what some Republicans fear, as you point out, that this is actually making Donald Trump stronger, that the spectacle of this, the distraction of this, the fundraising email this morning that he sent again is again making Trump stronger politically.
And maybe not just for the moment. There's a rally around happening. But what's implicit in that message? If you're Ron DeSantis, your argument was, I've got all of that you like about Donald Trump, but I don't have that messy other side. But now he's joining Donald Trump and saying, you know, the messy other side, the indictments, the impeachment, all of that, you know what? That's all a plot by the other side. There's no merit to it. It's a plot. So any of that messy side that Ron DeSantis was going to use to argue for turning the page, he's now joining in the chorus saying there is no messy side. The messy side is merely being hounded at every turn by liberals and the rest. And so it has a potential to not just help Donald Trump in the moment, but for longer period.
Look at the crowds here in New York City. We have not seen significant protests or any major security disruptions at this hour. And to let everyone know that even if former President Trump is charged with some 30 felonies, it will not prevent him from running for president of the United States. Just to walk through what will happen as Donald Trump makes it to the courthouse, we are told this is what's going to happen. He's going to be taken up to the 7th floor via the judge's private elevator to be arrested, read his rights, and get fingerprinted. A mugshot is not expected to be taken, and there are no plans to put him in a holding cell, as would happen with other defendants. And the whole process, we're told, could take about 20 minutes. That may be delayed if his lawyers say, well, we want to read the indictment first. And then after this processing, the former president will go up to the 15th floor for an arraignment before the judge. This is when we will see now defendant Trump. There's one camera there to record the few steps from door to courtroom. Trump could make remarks here. Our source tells us that he does want to do that. Let's bring in CBS News consultant and former NYPD Deputy Commissioner Richard Esposito. And Richard, tell us what happens next.
Well, right now, Nora, there's a final sweep being done of the building by the NYPD bomb squad, and they have a team in place outside the courtroom so that whatever happens next, they want to make sure the proceedings are secure and safe. What we'll see on the 7th or 9th floor, wherever the DA does the processing, is, as you said, about 20 minutes, which is about 2 hours less than it would take a normal defendant to have fingerprints go up to Albany, run against the databases, and come back. So they've expedited it for the former president.
Richard Esposito, thank you so much. Also want to bring in A.T. Smith, the former deputy director of the United States Secret Service and our CBS News law enforcement analyst. And A.T., so good to have you with us. There is an addition to all of the NYPD Blue, NYPD, I should say, and the FBI. There's also a significant Secret Service presence on the ground here, correct?
That's right, Nora. And they have been working hand in hand with not only the NYPD, but the New York State court officials to make sure that this goes seamlessly.
How many do we know? I mean, the number had been talked about, more than 100 Secret Service agents.
Well, they don't get into numbers, obviously, for the obvious reason. We don't want to tip their hand in that way. The Secret Service normally never does that, but I would safely say that 100 plus is a good guess.
A.T. Smith, good to have you. I want to bring back in Ricky Kleeman because there are so many questions about legally what we will learn from this indictment. Will Donald Trump be charged with a conspiracy?
He may.
What would that mean?
Well, one of the things that is clear is we know what we don't know. And what we don't know is a lot. And that concerns what are these charges really? Could he be charged with a conspiracy? Absolutely. With Michael Cohen, perhaps with Alan Weisselberg and other people from the Trump organization into how they structured the legal payments, that is, payments for legal fees to Michael Cohen, which is the false business record. But we also don't know, Nora, if there's going to be evidence that will come forth in the indictment about Karen McDougal. We don't know if there may be other tax counts. We will know all of this in a matter of a couple of hours.
And just to build on Ricky's excellent point, when you're looking at this case, for so long, we've heard about Michael Cohen, the former fixer, and his testimony is going to be crucial. Well, I sat down with Michael Cohen over the weekend, and he assured me, again, this is his word, that this case is about more than Michael Cohen. It's about documents. It's about communications, emails, text messages, financial records that paint the picture. And when we read this indictment today, it's going to be so interesting to see how District Attorney Bragg details how he's making these charges and whether it's about a witness and testimony or about documents. Because at the end of the day, the documents could have a lot more weight than what certain witnesses have to say.
Which is, I believe, originally what got Michael Cohen into trouble. He said, I didn't do this, and then the FBI went and searched his place and found out, actually, there's evidence here in documents, so we don't have to take your word for it. That was what started his undoing that ultimately ended him up in jail. So the documents will speak louder than any one person.
And they may speak at the time of trial rather than at the time of indictment, because we don't know how detailed this indictment is going to be. There's something called a talking indictment, and what happens in a talking indictment is you really detail that Michael Cohen allegedly called Donald Trump, or that there was a conversation of Michael Cohen, Donald Trump, and Alan Weisselberg, or whomever. This may not be that detailed, so we may not know everything now. We will eventually know it if there is a trial.
I want to bring in Scott Frederickson. He is a former federal prosecutor and joins us now. And Scott, thank you for all your contributions to CBS News on this case. What will you be looking for in this indictment?
Oh, good afternoon, Nora. I think the critical thing for most experienced counsel here is whether there are additional counts alleging related conduct separate from the Stormy Daniels payoff, the alleged falsification of business records and campaign finance? Or is this all only going to be about the Stormy Daniels case? If there are charges based on new conduct that allege additional violations, that makes the DA's case a whole lot stronger. There's a good deal of thought out there that Trump's counsel are going to have a very good shot to try and knock this case out before it ever gets to a jury, just based on the novel legal theory here. And that's why how this indictment is designed, if you will, what additional counts may be alleged that are new or related but different conduct is going to make a huge difference. So I think that's the critical piece we're all looking for today.
So I'm glad you brought this up. What could there be that's new? We know, of course, the Justice Department declined to bring federal charges. We know that Cyrus Vance, the prior Manhattan district attorney, couldn't get it done. And then, of course, a new district attorney came into office, was not yet ready to charge the former president, Mark Pomerantz, and another skilled prosecutor resigned. So what is it that has happened in that timeline that would allow the DA's office? What additional evidence have they been able to acquire in the past year that has led them to this moment?
Right. That's the big question to be answered. We don't know right now. We were all
tax records? Tax records?
It could be tax records. It could be other evidence of business records that have been falsified. It could simply be related to an alleged payoff of the former Playboy model, McDougal. It could be other evidence we're not aware of here. They put witnesses in to the grand jury, including the owner of the National Enquirer, and he testified. What did he tell the Manhattan DA's office that we don't know about? So it's a legitimate question that Trump's defense attorneys have raised, which is how come this case, which everyone thought was dead, that the feds decided not to bring in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District, New York. How come this case came back to life? So that's what we're looking for. We may not necessarily see it in the indictment. It may not necessarily detail the new evidence. But are there new charges that may have given this case new life? And is that the reason this case has been charged?
It's an excellent point. And one of those missing pieces as we try and look for information about what we'll find out shortly, Robert Costa, David Pecker, the publisher of the National Enquirer, who was involved in these alleged catch and kill stories, which is when there's negative news about Donald Trump, they would catch them, pay off the person, and then kill the story. Given that David Pecker was a recent witness, does that give us any indication about perhaps what was part of this indictment?
Yes, it does. Our sources close to this investigation say the fact that David Pecker is the most recent witness in this investigation, at least the one we know of, is a reveal of perhaps where this investigation is going. Because at the end of the day, what is the district attorney trying to do? Prove criminal intent. And it's not just about Stormy Daniels, as Scott said. It's perhaps about building a case about a culture around Donald Trump, around the National Enquirer, with Michael Cohen at the center, to have these so-called catch-and-kill operations. And that could show an intent to conspire to have these expenses done in a certain way, to hide them from the authorities, to hide them from the business expensing reports, and to hide them from campaign finance officials at the federal level.
Now we see Donald Trump arriving at Manhattan Criminal Court in Lower Manhattan. This has been the site of many historic cases, given the power of the Manhattan DA's office. But the president there, most of this courthouse has been cleared out, especially the 15th floor, where the president will meet the judge there and be read that indictment. You can see a number of Secret Service agents and other law enforcement. And there's Donald Trump waving to the cameras and to the crowd. As we noted, he will be brought in a side door there, brought up to the 7th floor via the judge's private elevator to be arrested. Donald Trump to be arrested, read his rights, and be fingerprinted. We do not expect a mugshot, as the former president's own attorneys have said publicly. Why do you need a mugshot of the most recognizable man in the world?
It is
also some security concerns about it as well, since in New York they're kept private.
It really is interesting. You hear the Attorney General, you hear others saying, hey, no one is above the law, right? But what we're seeing with this process is that this former president is being treated differently than other people who would go before that court. I think it's really interesting to see how this is unfolding. Obviously, it is unprecedented, but while no one may be above the law, when you talk about someone who's wealthy, someone who has political power, they are being treated differently by the court. That no mugshot, no perp walk that we all like to see.
It's in your wheelhouse. It all has to do with security. It's not that he's being treated differently because he's wealthy or is powerful. It really is he's being treated differently because of security.
Well, that's true, but they could do the mugshot.
Well, the mugshot is interesting because there have been a lot of sources who have said, well, the equipment isn't in that particular place to do the mugshot. Some have said, well, he's so recognizable. But others have said that they didn't want to do the mugshot because he was going to fundraise off of that mugshot, and that would be unseemly. Mugshots traditionally, as they come out in New York, are not given out to the public. But this is one you bet your bottom dollar would have leaked, yes, and I bet a lot of money would have been made.
Yeah.
Let's bring in our senior investigative correspondent, Catherine Herridge, because she is down there outside the courthouse and can describe the scene there. Catherine?
Nora, good to be with you from outside the courthouse. There's a real sense of tension in the air, kind of a mix of anticipation and also apprehension, as the former president is just a few minutes away and history will be made. In the last 90 minutes, the security has really locked down around this courthouse. While we could still be mobile, we went to the back of the courthouse, and the roads there, which may be the preferred entrance for the former president, have been locked down and barricaded for several blocks. They're also using garbage trucks to block key access points. And I can tell you, having worked in this space for 2 decades, there is a very visible security presence that is by design to be a visible deterrent. And then there is the security, which is not so visible. I can see with my trained eye a number of plainclothes police officers. They have been consistently moving through the crowd, and also members of a special tactical assistance response unit. They've been fixing cameras, surveillance cameras over this area in the last few days. These cameras are for the collection of digital intelligence, for crowd control, also destruction, and to identify emerging threats. So what we've got here is not only sort of a major, but also meticulous security presence, and I think by its very nature, historic as well. Just though in parting over to my right, we've had the protesters. It's been relatively quiet. They are barricaded, the pro-Trump group versus the counter-protesters. There was a little bit of a ruckus earlier when Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene came and then entered and left that area. And if you can just hear, we're starting to hear some of the crowds. I think the former president is getting very close. Nora, I'll send it back to you.
Catherine Herridge, thank you, noting that security presence there. And as the well-respected former NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton noted in an interview with Jeff Pegues earlier this week, one of the things they're concerned about is a lone wolf, someone who could carry out an attack. And so that's why everyone on high alert today. No specific threats, according to Jeff Pegues' reporting at this hour, but nevertheless, a huge show of force by law enforcement. Real quick, why did Trump bring on a new white-collar defense attorney, Robert?
Because they're preparing now for a possible trial. Trump has so many lawyers on so many different fronts, but now that this is a formal indictment, now going to be in arraignment, there have been discussions inside Trump's world about how is he going to formalize this team. So he has brought on a veteran criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, to help bolster the legal team. He's still keeping on Joe Tacopina and other lawyers who have worked on this particular New York case, but he wants to have someone who has experience. Todd Blanche is someone who worked for Paul Manafort on his legal challenges. The former Trump campaign manager also worked for a Rudy Giuliani associate, so he's bringing on a heavy hitter, legally speaking, to help him out.
Todd Blanche serving 9 years as a federal prosecutor for the SDNY, well-experienced, well-regarded, some real firepower in the Trump legal team, just as Joe Tacopina busy with another civil case in this very same courthouse, working on that E. Jean Carroll case, which has alleged that Trump raped her. He, of course, has said that is not true, but there's a lot of things that the Trump attorneys are battling at this hour in a number of different courthouses across America. As we just saw, former President Donald Trump now inside the courthouse here in Lower Manhattan. We're going to step away for just a moment, but we will be back in about 30 minutes for the historic indictment and arraignment of the former president. We may be hearing from him shortly. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Nora O'Donnell in New York.
For Now is always on.
Get the Channel 3000 app, activate the push alerts, and we will send you breaking news, traffic, and weather alerts as it happens.
The Channel 3000 app. Get it now.
Powered by News 3 Now.